Tonight, you're not a lady of the manor. You're not the daughter of a wealthy family. And you're certainly not the mistress of the house. Tonight, you're something far more invisible. You are a Victorian governess. Educated enough to teach Latin, French, and history. Yet not wealthy enough to sit with the family at dinner. You'll spend your days shaping the minds of children who may never remember your name. You'll correct handwriting, teach manners, and swallow your opinions. You'll live in a strange world between servant and aristocrat. Neither fully accepted nor fully ignored. Your room is small. Your meals are lonely. And your future depends on making yourself useful without ever becoming noticeable. So dim the lights, settle into your favorite chair, and imagine the soft ticking of a Victorian clock somewhere down the hallway. Because tonight, we're stepping into a life filled with quiet sacrifices, endless expectations, and secrets hidden behind classroom doors. You wake before sunrise. Not because you want to. Because you must. The room is dark and cold. A thin layer of frost clings to the edges of your window. The fire died sometime during the night, and no one will relight it for you. You are not important enough for that. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders and stare at the ceiling. For a brief moment, you imagine staying in bed. Just 5 more minutes. But the children will be awake soon. Lessons begin at 8. And if you're late, everyone notices. If you're early, no one cares. Such is the life of a governess. You sit up slowly. The wooden floor sends a shock of cold through your bare feet. Your room is small. Much smaller than the bedrooms occupied by the family downstairs. There is a narrow bed. A washstand. A chair. And a tiny writing desk pushed beneath the window. This room is both your home and your prison. You wash quickly using water that feels like melted ice. There is no luxury here. No maid to prepare warm water. No servant to help you dress. Everything is your responsibility. You brush your hair. Pin it neatly. Fasten your plain gray dress. And glance at yourself in the mirror. The reflection staring back is respectable. Invisible. Exactly what society expects. As a governess, your greatest success is often measured by how little attention you attract. You leave your room and walk quietly down the corridor. The house is still sleeping. The carpets soften your footsteps. The walls seem to absorb every sound. You pass family portraits hanging in golden frames. Generations of wealthy faces stare down at you. People who inherited fortunes. People who inherited houses. People who inherited futures. You inherited employment. A very different thing. The nursery awaits. And so do your pupils. The eldest boy is 10. Bright but stubborn. The younger girl is 8. Curious but easily distracted. Their parents expect excellence. Every mistake reflects on you. If the boy struggles with arithmetic, it is your failure. If the girl forgets her French vocabulary, it becomes your fault. You enter the schoolroom. The smell of chalk and ink greets you. You arrange books on the desk. Straighten papers. Prepare exercises. Soon you hear footsteps racing through the hallway. The children arrive. Already full of energy. Already testing your patience. Good morning, miss. They say it politely. Most days. Other days they groan at the sight of grammar lessons. You smile anyway. Patience is part of your salary. The morning passes in a blur of reading and recitation. French verbs. Geography maps. History dates. Handwriting drills. You correct mistakes gently. Again and again. Hour after hour. Outside the window, life continues. Carriages roll past. Factory whistles echo through the city. Birds land briefly on tree branches. You watch them sometimes. Not because you're distracted. Because they're free. A luxury you secretly admire. By mid-morning, your voice begins to tire. You've explained fractions 3 times. Corrected spelling 7 times. And settled 2 arguments over pencils. Yet the day is only beginning. The children grow restless. Their attention wanders. The youngest starts staring out the window. The oldest pretends to have a headache. You recognize every excuse. You've heard them all before. Still, you continue. Because a governess cannot lose her composure. Not visibly. Around 11 o'clock, the family gathers downstairs. You hear distant laughter. The clink of teacups. The sounds of comfort. You are not invited. You remain in the schoolroom. Teaching. Always teaching. This is the strange position you occupy. Educated enough to understand their conversations. Not important enough to join them. Sometimes loneliness arrives quietly. Not as sadness. As silence. The realization that entire days can pass without speaking to another adult. Without anyone asking how you're feeling. Without anyone caring whether you're happy. The children are your company. And children eventually grow up. Then leave. Then forget. By noon, lessons pause briefly. You supervise lunch. You remind the children about manners. Straight backs. Proper posture. Correct use of utensils. The irony never escapes you. You teach them how to belong to a world that does not fully accept you. A world that needs your knowledge. But rarely respects your existence. You watch them eat. Laugh. Complain about vegetables. Dream about future adventures. And for a moment, you wonder what became of your own dreams. Perhaps they still exist somewhere. Hidden beneath lesson plans and report cards. Waiting patiently. Like books left unread on a shelf. The clock strikes noon. Half the day is gone. And half still remains. The lessons continue. The expectations continue. And you continue. Because in Victorian England, being a governess means living a life balanced between respectability and invisibility. And tomorrow morning, you'll wake up and do it all again.
Afternoon lessons, social isolation, and life between classes. The afternoon begins with a strange kind of silence. Not the peaceful silence of rest. Not the comforting silence of solitude. But the silence that comes when you realize you're surrounded by people and still somehow alone. The children return to the schoolroom after lunch. Less energetic now. More restless. The younger girl drags her feet dramatically across the carpet. Her brother carries a book under one arm as though it weighs as much as a sack of coal. You hide a smile. Children rarely change. Victorian children are no different. They simply wear nicer clothes while complaining. You call everyone to their seats. The lessons resume. French first. Then geography. Then penmanship. The afternoon sunlight spills across the room, illuminating tiny particles of dust floating through the air. The children yawn. You yawn internally. Everyone continues anyway. Because routine is everything. Victorian households thrive on routine. Wake. Eat. Study. Visit. Dine. Sleep. Repeat. Every day feels remarkably similar. Perhaps that's why the hours sometimes blend together. You teach French verbs. The youngest repeatedly forgets the difference between être and devoir. The older boy insists he'll never need French because he plans to become an explorer. You explain patiently that explorers often benefit from speaking multiple languages. He remains unconvinced. You remain patient. At least on the outside. By 3 o'clock, the lessons shift to reading. Each child takes turns reading aloud. Some passages are excellent. Others sound as though the English language is being invented one word at a time. You correct pronunciation gently. Encourage confidence. Praise effort. A governess must be teacher, mentor, disciplinarian, and performer all at once. The performance never truly ends. Not even when no one notices it. As the children read, your thoughts drift. Not far. Just enough to wonder what life might have looked like if circumstances had been different. Many governesses came from respectable families. Families that once had money. Families that lost money. Families ruined by bad investments, illness, or death. A father dies unexpectedly. A business collapses. An inheritance disappears. And suddenly a young woman finds herself needing employment. Respectable employment. Teaching becomes one of the few acceptable choices. For many women, becoming a governess was never a dream. It was survival. The clock ticks steadily. The children continue reading. Outside, a carriage passes. You glance briefly through the window. Then return your attention to the lesson. Distraction is a luxury. You cannot afford many luxuries. At 4 o'clock, lessons finally end. The children cheer as though they've escaped prison. Books close. Chairs scrape. Footsteps race toward freedom. Within moments, the room is empty. Except for you. Again, the silence returns. You begin gathering papers, correcting mistakes, organizing tomorrow's materials. This work remains invisible. Parents see results, rarely the effort behind them. A well-behaved child earns praise. A successful examination earns praise. A talented pupil earns praise. The governess often receives little more than a polite nod. Still, you continue. Because professionalism matters, even when recognition does not arrive. Eventually, you leave the schoolroom. The house feels different in the afternoon. The family occupies drawing rooms and parlors. Visitors sometimes arrive. Conversations drift through hallways. Laughter echoes from distant rooms. You hear it all. Participate in almost none of it. This is the peculiar position of a governess. You are neither servant nor family. Too educated for one world. Too poor for the other. You exist somewhere in between. An island between social classes. Many governesses describe this as the loneliest part of the job. Servants share friendships downstairs. Family members share companionship upstairs. You belong completely to neither group. A maid passes you in the corridor. She nods politely. You nod back. Friendly, but distant. The boundaries remain. Always. You return briefly to your room. The small space feels comforting. At least here, expectations quiet down. On the desk sits a book. A novel you've been reading secretly. Not because novels are forbidden. Because enjoying them too openly might seem inappropriate. Victorian society has rules about everything, including how women spend their free time. You sit near the window, open the book, and begin reading. For a few precious minutes, you disappear into another world. A world where people make choices, where adventures happen, where women occasionally control their own destinies. The story pulls you in. The characters feel alive. The pages feel honest. Then a knock interrupts everything. Reality returns. A servant informs you that one of the children requires assistance with homework. Of course. The book closes. The fantasy ends. Duty wins again. You straighten your dress, follow the servant, and return to work. Because being a governess means being available. Always. Needed when convenient. Invisible when not. The afternoon fades slowly toward evening. Shadows lengthen. The house grows quieter. Candles begin replacing sunlight. Another day inches forward. Another day remarkably similar to the last. Yet somehow, despite everything, you continue. Not because it's easy. Not because it's rewarding. But because resilience has become part of who you are. And tomorrow, when the children open their books again, you'll be there. Waiting. Teaching. Guiding. Quietly shaping futures that may never remember your name.
Evening arrives slowly. The golden sunlight disappears from the windows. The house transforms. Candles flicker. Shadows stretch across the walls. The sounds of daytime activity begin to fade. For most members of the household, Evening brings comfort. For you, it often brings something else. Loneliness. The children have finished their studies. They now spend time with their parents. Perhaps they gather in the drawing room. Perhaps they listen to music. Perhaps guests have arrived for dinner. You hear distant laughter, fragments of conversation, the occasional sound of a piano. Life continues downstairs. Without you. Your role in the day's performance is mostly complete. For now. You retreat to your room. The hallway feels unusually quiet. Each step echoes softly. The house is beautiful. Large windows. Elegant furniture. Expensive artwork. Yet none of it belongs to you. You live inside someone else's world. A permanent guest who never truly becomes part of the household. Your evening meal arrives on a tray. Bread. Tea. Perhaps a small serving of meat. Nothing extravagant. Nothing memorable. You eat alone. Again. The solitude feels heavier at night. During the day, work keeps loneliness occupied. Lessons create distractions. Responsibilities fill empty spaces. But evening leaves room for reflection. And reflection can be dangerous. You sit beside the small lamp on your desk. A book rests nearby. Several letters lie folded in a drawer. Letters from old friends. Letters from family members. Some are years old. You reread them anyway. The familiar handwriting feels comforting. Like hearing voices from another life. You remember home? Or at least the version of home that exists in memory. Memories have a way of becoming softer with time. Kinder. Warmer. Perhaps more beautiful than reality ever was. You wonder what old friends are doing now. Some are married. Some have children. Some disappeared from your life entirely. Time moves quickly, especially when every day feels identical. Outside the window, darkness settles over the city. Gas lamps glow in the streets. Carriages continue moving through the night. People attend dinners, parties, theaters, concerts. Entire worlds exist beyond these walls. Yet your world remains surprisingly small. Many governesses live this way for years. Some for decades. Teaching other people's children while postponing their own dreams indefinitely. Marriage opportunities were rare. Social opportunities were limited. Independence remained difficult. Yet many persevered. Not because they lacked ambition, because they lacked alternatives. You open your book again. This time, you read more slowly, savoring every page. Books become companions, friends, escapes. Entire adventures compressed into paper and ink. For many governesses, reading offered something precious. Freedom. Not physical freedom. Mental freedom. The ability to travel anywhere while remaining seated in a tiny room. To imagine possibilities beyond daily routines. To remember that life contained more than lesson plans and schedules. The hours pass quietly. A clock somewhere downstairs strikes 9. Then 10. Soon the household begins preparing for sleep. Doors close. Footsteps fade. Conversations end. Silence settles over everything. You close your book, extinguish the lamp, and sit for a moment in darkness. Reflecting. Wondering. Dreaming. Tomorrow will look remarkably similar to today. The same lessons. The same responsibilities. the same invisible labor. Yet despite everything, you feel a small spark of pride. Not because anyone thanked you, not because anyone noticed, but because you know the truth. You helped shape young minds today. You encouraged curiosity. You taught knowledge. You offered patience. You made a difference. Even if history rarely remembers women like you. Eventually, you climb into bed. The blankets feel cold. The room feels quiet. The world feels distant. You close your eyes. And somewhere between exhaustion and sleep, one final thought appears. Perhaps being invisible does not mean being unimportant. Perhaps the people who quietly shape the future matter more than anyone realizes. With that thought, sleep finally arrives. And another Victorian day comes to an end.
The dreams, sacrifices, and untold legacy of a Victorian governess. The house is asleep now. The hallways are silent. The candles have burned low. Even the grandfather clock seems quieter somehow. But you are still awake. Lying in bed. Staring at the ceiling. Listening to the faint creaks of an old Victorian house settling into the darkness. This is often your favorite part of the day. Not because it's comfortable. Not because it's peaceful. But because it finally belongs to you. No lessons. No expectations. No polite smiles. No careful balancing between servant and lady. Just you. And your thoughts. For a few precious moments, nobody is asking anything of you. You pull the blanket closer and close your eyes. But sleep doesn't come immediately. It rarely does. Your mind drifts instead. Back through the years. Back to the young woman you once were. The girl who imagined a very different future. Perhaps you dreamed of marriage. Perhaps you dreamed of traveling. Perhaps you imagined a little cottage somewhere in the countryside. A garden. A family. A life that belonged entirely to you. Most young Victorian women had dreams. The problem wasn't dreaming. The problem was reality. Reality had a habit of choosing for them. A father's death. A family's financial collapse. A lost inheritance. A failed business. One unexpected tragedy could change everything. And for many women, becoming a governess was not a career choice. It was the only respectable option left. You remember your first position. How nervous you were. How carefully you packed your belongings. How excited you felt stepping into a new chapter of life. You thought knowledge would be enough. You thought hard work would be enough. You thought kindness would be enough. In many ways, they were. But no one warned you about loneliness. No one explained how invisible a governess could become. You taught children every day. Shared meals nearby. Lived beneath the same roof. Yet somehow remained an outsider. Always close. Never included. You turn onto your side. The mattress creaks softly. Outside your window, the city sleeps. Somewhere beyond the darkness, thousands of other women are lying awake too. Mothers. Factory workers. Servants. Shop girls. Widows. Seamstresses. Each carrying burdens of her own. Victorian England often celebrated women for their sacrifice. But rarely asked whether those sacrifices were fair. You think about the children you've taught. The dozens of faces that have passed through your classroom. Some were brilliant. Some were difficult. Some were wonderfully kind. Others treated you as little more than part of the furniture. Yet you taught them all. Patiently. Faithfully. Year after year. Perhaps one day they'll become lawyers. Politicians. Doctors. Business owners. Landowners. Perhaps they'll marry well. Raise families. Travel the world. Perhaps they'll accomplish extraordinary things. And maybe, just maybe, a tiny part of their success will belong to you. Not publicly, not officially, but quietly, hidden beneath the surface, like roots beneath a tree. No one praises the roots. Everyone admires the branches. Yet one cannot exist without the other. That thought brings a small smile to your face. Because deep down, you know something important. History rarely remembers people like you. Books celebrate kings, generals, inventors, explorers, politicians. But history is also built by teachers, by caregivers, by women who spent their lives shaping others. Even when nobody noticed. Especially when nobody noticed. The wind taps gently against the window. You glance toward the moonlight filtering through the curtains. The silver glow illuminates the small room. Your room. Not luxurious. Not impressive. But yours. At least for now. You look toward the books stacked neatly beside your bed. Old companions. Silent friends. They've traveled with you through multiple households. Different cities. Different employers. Different chapters of life. Books never judged your social status. Books never cared whether you were family or servant. Books simply opened their pages and welcomed you. Perhaps that's why you love them so much. For a moment, you imagine another life. A different century. A different world. A world where women can attend universities. Choose careers. Own property. Vote. Speak openly. Live independently. The idea feels almost impossible. Almost magical. Yet somewhere deep inside, you believe it will happen. Maybe not during your lifetime. Maybe not soon. But someday. Progress moves slowly. Like a river carving through stone. Almost invisible at first. Until one day the landscape has changed completely. You think about the girls you've taught. The young women growing up under your guidance. Perhaps their lives will be different. Perhaps they'll have opportunities you never had. Perhaps they'll ask questions society once discouraged. Perhaps they'll refuse to remain silent. And perhaps that's the real legacy of a governess. Not grammar lessons. Not arithmetic exercises. Not handwriting practice. But possibilities. The quiet transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next. The planting of seeds you may never see bloom. A clock somewhere downstairs strikes midnight. The sound echoes faintly through the house. Another day has ended. Another day remarkably ordinary. And yet somehow important. Because ordinary days create extraordinary lives. Most people never realize this. They imagine history happening only during wars. Coronations. Revolutions. Great speeches. But history also happens here. In schoolrooms. In nurseries. In quiet conversations between teacher and child. In lessons repeated patiently over and over again. The future is built in these moments. One lesson at a time. One child at a time. One day at a time. Your eyes begin to feel heavy now. Sleep finally approaches. The worries of tomorrow seem distant. The lesson plans can wait until morning. The responsibilities can wait until sunrise. For now, there is only silence. And rest. As you drift toward sleep, one final thought crosses your mind. You may never become famous. Your portrait may never hang in a museum. Your name may never appear in history books. But somewhere in the future, the children you taught will tell stories. Raise families. Build lives. And carry pieces of your influence with them. Even if they never realize it. Even if nobody remembers your name. Your work mattered. Your sacrifices mattered. Your life mattered. And perhaps that is enough. The house remains silent. The moonlight fades behind drifting clouds. Your breathing slows. The long Victorian day is finally over. And at last, the governess sleeps. Ending outro. And there you have it. A full day in the life of a Victorian governess. A woman caught between worlds. Educated but overlooked. Respected but isolated. Essential yet often forgotten. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now close your eyes. Relax. And drift peacefully into sleep. Good night. Crescent Moon Book Sparkles.